On this week's episode, we've got a new driver, a new launch event, and a new race director. Hello everyone and welcome to Back of the Grid. I'm Chris, joined as always by Tom.
Hello.
And by Stu.
Hello.
We had a week off last week because nothing was going on, and then promptly there was news every single day for the rest of the week, so it's probably for the best that we didn't record an episode and immediately out of date. But yeah, lots of stuff going on to get into this week before we look ahead to Vegas. And we'll start, I guess, with the latest piece in the 2025 grid puzzle, which is that Sauber have signed Gabriel Bortoleto for their second driver alongside Hulkenberg. If you haven't seen him already, he's a Brazilian 20-year-old. He's reigning F3 champion and currently leading F2, so potentially in that small club of back-to-back F2 and F3 champions as things currently stand. He was a McLaren junior until this news. Basically, McLaren agreed to release him
until he wasn't.
Join Sauber. Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, being a McLaren junior right now is not much good because there's nowhere to go. Zach Brown likes to play gotta catch 'em all with drivers, but he's got two of the best on the grid right now, so clearly he wasn't going to go to McLaren. But yeah, I mean, he seems like a talented guy. It's cool to see him join the grid. So many rookies next season now. Like,
yeah,
is he going to be 4 or 5? Are we going to have next year?
Yeah, but it should be interesting.
After like the most stagnant driver market in the world this time last year.
Do you think that it's a good idea for Sauber becoming Audi, having someone that green in the car?
I think it makes sense, doesn't it, right? Like, I'm not going to make any secret of the fact that I'm sad that Bottas is now left without a seat, but having Hulkenberg and Bottas in your car is just having two of the same driver, basically. Like, they're both bringing very similar things to the table. Like, if you're going to hire someone with the experience of a Hulkenberg, it makes sense to have a rookie, or at least someone a bit greener alongside them, I think.
I suppose it's a good time to be starting to come into a team when we're about to go into a change anyway. Gets you a general feel for it, doesn't it? Gets you a season that's almost, for all intents and purpose, like a little bit of could chalk that one up as a introductory season, let's say, because everything's going to be changing the season after anyway. So
yeah, plus after the year Sauber have had, expectations could not be lower for what that team's going to achieve next year.
Minimal.
Well, at least they'll have loads of wind tunnel time.
Yeah, they'll be. Won't know what to do with it. They'll be sticking things in the wind tunnel just to use their time up. Obviously leaves Bottas and Zhou without drivers next year. Bottas has already said that going back to Mercedes in a kind of test and reserve role is an option for him, so I imagine that's what we'll see him doing. I suppose he's looking at the likes of Hulkenberg and Magnussen, who were out of the sport for a couple of years and then came back, and hoping he can do that. But I don't know. As much as I'd like to see him have a longer career, and I think he probably deserves one, I struggle to see Bottas finding a way back in after this, to be honest, especially with the number of rookies we've got coming through.
Yeah,
maybe when Antonelli bins it every weekend,
Mercedes
will be on the phone to him.
maybe that's why he's going to go back to them, just so he's there ready and waiting. Normally whenever we have a driver like binning it, they'll cut to the young driver in the garage watching on. It's going to be the reverse Mercedes. Every time Antonelli bins it, all cut back to the wise old head of Bottas. Yeah,
the mullet and handlebar moustache of Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah,
waiting in the wings.
Interestingly, Zhou has been linked to a move to Ferrari to be a test and reserve driver. If you were being very cynical, you'd look at Ferrari's declining sales in China in the last few years and make a link there, as some people have. I would never dare be that cynical, but that's where it looks like Zhou might be off to.
Yeah, I mean, judging by other test and reserve drivers over the last 5 to 10 years, I would say it's probably not going to amount to much. I mean, Giovinazzi kind of got opportunities elsewhere because of it. I suppose Behrman's technically classed as their test driver, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's got in the seat when it's needed it, but
Yeah, was their reserve driver at the very least? That's proven.
yeah.
And I suppose you had like
I suppose that's partly because
Fuoco.
he's there and Giovinazzi isn't, because Giovinazzi's busy doing the sports car stuff, isn't he? Like the WEC.
And that's the thing, maybe
So
this is a route for Zhou to end up going down a WEC route. Like, you had Fuoco,
Yeah.
who was technically a Ferrari junior, never got anywhere near a Formula One car, but he's now doing very well in WEC. So
Yeah, it's a job, isn't it? He'll have a job. At least he won't be unemployed.
there's worse things to be doing to earn your money, isn't there?
Yeah.
We'll move on to the most unexpected bit of news, which is that Niels Wittich, the F1 race director, is stepping down with immediate effect. He's been around since Michael Massey was removed from the role at the beginning of 2022. He started off sharing the job, and then from beginning of last season, he did it full time. But yeah, he's gone effective immediately. The official statement said that he stepped down from his position as F1 race director to pursue new opportunities, but it's been pretty widely reported that he was given the boot. He was told to leave. He didn't choose to leave. And
By
that,
the boss, by the big dog.
yeah, the thing I've seen mentioned is disagreements around interpretation and application of the sporting regulations. Because I've read things saying, because we've also had in the last week the FIA compliance officer, a guy called Paolo Bassari, has also stepped down, and he was supposedly involved in the investigation into Mohammed Ben Salem, the FIA president. Do you remember last year the whole, I think it was after Saudi Arabia, he was trying to get Alonso's podium reinstated to get like taking a penalty off him or something along those lines. And there was an investigation into whether he was meddling, and supposedly this compliance officer was involved in that. But yeah, all of a sudden we've just got these high up FIA people choosing to step down. It's all,
Well, it's endemic in Formula One, isn't it? There's a lot of good people disappearing from Formula One at the moment. Damon Hill's leaving Sky Sports. He's a really good pundit. He's going.
I mean, there's been a string of people leaving the FIA in the last few years.
Yeah. It shows you. I think it shows you the state of the sport overall. I think it's a mess.
It feels like, rather than having all these people stepping away, I feel like there's one person who could be removed that would solve all of these problems, and that's the person at the top, because he seems to be the name when all of this comes back. And yeah, as Discord have just pointed out, it comes off the back of that letter that the GDPA sent to him as well, basically saying, stop treating us like children. We're gonna swear sometimes. Stop sticking your oar in where it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So there was another bit of news today about the regulations that instead of when someone doesn't make their grid slot on the grid, as I read it, it says that they're now just going to fill the grid slots from front to back.
So everybody moves up one.
Everyone basically moves forward one spot, is the way I interpreted what they'd written. Now, I don't know how this actually works in practice, because, say, if you get an uneven number of people who don't make their grid spots, then that gives an advantage to one side of the grid over the other.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's been like a disagreement over this very specific rule, and they've all gone up in arms and be like, no, throw the toys out the plan. I'm like, no, I'm going. If you do this, I'm going. And now, those guys left, and then this rule appeared, or this amendment to the rules appeared, and it's like that seems a bit coincidental to me.
I mean, we have just come off the back of a race where people were lining up in the wrong grid slot because somebody had not
Sergio
made
Perez
it back
went
all the way
forward,
around. There were, whether there were all knock-ons from the one, like I think it was Perez was the main one everyone noticed, but there were a couple of others, like
everyone except the FAA.
Yeah. But is it potentially like fallout from this, that whole situation, part of it came round because of the fact that
probably
people were
it's
lining
probably
up wrong?
because I reckon it would have, the way all that unfolded probably did cause a few disagreements, and
you
can imagine like something, the way that whole thing, it looked a bit messy, didn't it? It looked a lot messy, so the way that all played out would probably rub people up. I mean, it did rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a starting grid, to be fair, if there's been any disagreement over it that's led to this, which I doubt this is just like scapegoat information.
Well, it obviously won't just be that. There'll be a build-up of things, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But I think, like, to be fair, if somebody can no longer start on the grid because they've chosen to change something or whatever the reason might be that results in a pit lane start, in practice, you probably should start moving people because it's only the same as a penalty. Like, if you qualify 10th and someone higher up gets a penalty, you start 9th. You don't start 10th and there's a gap in the grid because someone's been dropped from a penalty. So having to start from the pit lane because you've changed a component in Parc Fermé
depends.
Is a penalty basically. So it makes sense.
It depends
to
when
treat
it
them all the
happens,
same.
I suppose.
But
I don't know
obviously,
if I agree. Like, I think if you can't if you qualify in a position, then you should start from that position on the grid. If you qualify 10th, then you should be in the 10th spot on the grid.
So you're saying they should leave gaps for people with penalties, is what you're saying? Because you'd have to, that's what I'm saying. It should be consistent across both. It should either be
that's
you
different
never
because
move
the penalty,
anyone or
the
you
penalties,
move everyone.
Well, the penalties are applied after qualifying, though, aren't they? If someone's got a penalty,
exactly.
Sometimes you know that beforehand. So that's kind of different. If someone's like on their way round to the grid, or if something happens in between quali and that means, like, say, someone gets injured or something, and their grid slot is not going to be. They've not done anything to achieve a penalty. They're not. They haven't like transgressed, so they don't have a penalty, and that slot is suddenly vacated. That shouldn't look other drivers into taking a position one or two places further forward if it's, say, 2 on the same side of the grid, because I think that just opens it up for more confusion. Because if it is the case that people suddenly have to start on a different side of the grid to what they left the grid from, then because someone's spun,
I think
there's a timing
had
element,
a breakdown on the thingy, like on the warm up lap.
That specifically though is not what caused the problem, was it? It wasn't actually Stroll that was missing
his wrist.
No, it was a gap generally in front of someone, and they went a row too far forward. But it wasn't actually Stroll no longer being on the grid that caused it. It was an already empty spot further back from somebody who had qualified and then couldn't partake.
Oh, and then had a pit lane start.
It either had a pit lane start or weren't in it at all. So it could have either been Albon with the crash.
It was Albon.
Whoever started in the pits. I can't remember. It's 2 weeks ago now.
It was Albon, because Albon was 10th. And Perez qualified
ruled
12th,
from 12th. Yeah, ruled from 12th
and
into 10th.
he moved forward into Albon's position to line up directly behind the car ahead when he should have.
I'm doing this on 2.5-week-old memory at this point, but I'm pretty sure that the scenario you're talking about with Stroll isn't actually the cause of it. It was the one.
No, it's not. I'm not talking about that scenario. I'm talking about Albon still. I'm saying, like, he's qualified in that position, and then he's got injured and not been able to take up his grid slot. So because he's not transgressed and that no rules have been broken, then no other car should be promoted to take his place.
I guess at some point you've got to set a point where you're like, this is the published grid spots that you have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's ultimately it depends where that point lies, and
the only reason this is changing
has to
is
lie
because
before they set off on the formation lap. But
the only reason this is changing is because Sergio Perez couldn't find the correct grid spot to sit in, and then it had a concertina effect on every car behind him.
Yeah, that is
because they all lined up direct. They all used, instead of using like the numbers on the grid or some system to tell the drivers what their position on the grid
which should work.
i.e. like a person stood on the pit wall with the grid number.
Well, they have little signs, don't they?
Yeah, they have little signs everywhere. Yeah. But people using the wrong reference to line themselves up on the grid. So in a way, it's kind of, I guess, like, it's circumstantial because visibility wouldn't have been great. They would have had water all over their visors and stuff, so they wouldn't have been able to see like the numbers along the sides. So they would have in that case, the default is to line up directly behind the car ahead of you because that's your best reference. But it all falls apart if the if the car three cars ahead of you
yeah.
goes in the wrong grid slot and everyone has the same mindset, then you all end up a grid slot too far forward. And there just needs to be a better system in those conditions for showing drivers where they need to be on the grid. I think
it shouldn't be difficult.
It shouldn't be a change. It shouldn't be a rule change. Like, you shouldn't need to mess around with it. You should just be able to put everyone. I think, adding more rules. I say this all the time. Adding more rules into Formula One isn't. It's already a bloated rule book. It's already open to so much interpretation. It's already a real mess. Adding more into it is not a good idea. Implementing systems to help them apply the rules is surely a much better idea than adding more rules that they can't even follow in the first place.
Very simple things such as light boards or even just teams with a board solves it. It works in every other series, so... I mean, to be fair, it's a rare circumstance. It doesn't happen all that often,
Which is all the more reason why it doesn't need the rule change, I think.
And to go back to your original point about this, coming from disagreements behind the scenes, you look back at when John Todd was FIA president, for all of his faults, he got a bunch of people who were good at their jobs to go and do their jobs, and he went off and he did a lot of road safety campaigning and stuff. Yeah. Whereas Slayham that you've got now just seems to want to be involved at every single level and be
the centre of attention.
Every decision himself.
He seeks the spotlight no matter what.
Like, clearly Niels Wittich was not a yes man, so he's gone.
This job to him isn't, I want to make the FIA a better body, a better place for people to work, I don't want to put better systems in place. I just want to draw as much attention to myself for my career. Mm-hmm. That's all his agenda
100%. Yeah. I mean, as I've said multiple times, the whole giving them a medal on the podium, literally he invented it, so he has an excuse to go on the podium every time. Frustrating. In lighter news, we've got a big livery launch event at the O2 in February, where all teams are going to be revealing their 2026 liveries. They've gone to pains to stress that it is just the liveries. There's going to be no new cars there, as expected. No team's going to reveal their brand new car.
As it is at every launch event ever.
So, for a long time now, not every launch ever, but for a long time.
What I mean,
recent history.
To be fair, since they've started doing launch events, I don't think many, if any, have put the actual car out there.
But they've already sold out what I'm going to insist on calling the Millennium Dome. Tickets starting at £58 a piece to go and see some show cars.
Oh, money!
This year's
cars.
It's
money.
Yeah, imagine that.
It's
a wonderful fan experience, Stu. It's a great opportunity to get the fans and the teams together in one place. I can sort of see what they're going for, but ultimately it is just going to be a load of show cars with a paint job on them. The only potential positive I can see from this is that it might encourage teams to put in a bit more effort with the liveries. Because if you imagine, think back to last year when we went and watched all the liveries. If you imagine, let's say that Alpine that they wheeled out last year, imagine that in front of a live audience and the reaction they would have in person. That's going to be a real bad look if a team rolls out a mostly carbon fibre car again.
Everyone literally booing it.
And a stadium full of people going, that's a bit boring.
They won't care. The teams won't care because all they care about is going as fast as possible. And if that means not having a paint job, then you'll take that hit in the Millennium Dome. You will take the hit of people not cheering for your car because there's only going to be about 3 teams that get big cheers in London anyway. So
I'll tell you what we'll get, because you're right. What we'll get is the marketing department will insist on them having a fancy livery that everyone's going to like for the reveals, and then by the time we get to Bahrain for testing, a lot of the paint will have mysteriously fallen off all of them. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, I get it. I saw it. I did see it and think, that's not a bad idea. I can't believe it's taken them this long to come up with that, especially being Liberty Media. I think it does make sense to make a season launch event. What are they calling it? Are they calling it the season launch, or are they calling it what?
I think so.
I can't remember the exact wording, if I'm totally honest with you.
Oh, I think it's just the like Formula One team car launches or something like that, just in one place. Which
the thing
kind of makes sense.
There's a lot of stuff around it being the 75th year, so there's a lot of F175 branding around it. So it could easily be considered the F175 event.
God, I mean, any excuse to put a number of a year against something as well, eh? Like, oh God, honestly, like 75. It's my, it'll be my 45th birthday eventually.
For the record,
I can't wait for that.
For the record, it is officially called F175 Live. I thought it was. It is.
Yeah, I mean,
rolls the tongue a bit better.
Look, it makes sense. To have it makes sense financially for F1 to use the asset that they've got and create an event that people will want to go to, and it probably did sell. I imagine it sold out. Did it sell out?
Oh, immediately.
Yeah, it was instant.
Like in a day.
Yeah.
Like,
because people, especially Formula One
hours.
fans, will buy any old Formula One crap, especially an opportunity to just be there with...
Yeah.
I mean, the opportunity to actually be around a Formula One car for 50 quid is actually not bad.
I was going to say, when you compare that to the cost of going to Silverstone, to go and see some cars in person and see, I assume the majority of the drivers are going to be there as well. Like, you know, if you can't afford a race weekend at Silverstone for many hundreds of pounds, 50, 60 quid to go and see that, it's a much better deal, I'm sure.
And also, to be fair, when they do stuff like this, they tend to put a bit of money into it and make it into something that's a pretty good experience if you're in there. So, I reckon it'll be all right, but I would rather be watching it from home, or I'd rather just... I'd rather a normal car. Because, like, how do McLaren feel about this? Like, McLaren have got a massive auditorium where they launch their car every year, and suddenly there's no point in it anymore. Like,
basically a room built for it.
Yeah. And other teams, they've all got their spaces, and this kind of like ruins it. Like, it takes opportunities away from other venues as well a little bit, I think, which is not necessarily, when you look at it from that perspective, maybe it feels a little bit more like Formula One are being a bit greedy with their asset and sort of taking opportunities away from other places to use Formula One for all it has. So.
It's borderline. It's borderline on that franchise ownership. Yeah, like the other things that the other sports I can think of where you get events like this are all the franchise sports. It's your hockey, it's your US football, it's your NBA, like basketball. Like, the franchise sports are the ones that have these kind of season launch events and pre-season events and draft events and so on. Like, it's very much that way of doing things that they're bringing into Formula One, which
keep it all in house.
Doesn't mean I'm objective to it or anything like that, but you can see where the inspiration comes from. But I mean, I'd have happily gone. I wouldn't have gone at £100 a ticket for them top end tickets, but I'd have considered it just to see what it was. And this is the thing. I think if they don't do a good job of it, it will flop and people will not go again. So I think that for me, there's
only so much Formula One I can stomach in a year, especially especially when there's 24 races. Like, we don't need like a whole nother. Like, just give us a break, man.
They're going to drag it out for 2 hours to make it worthwhile for people going there. So I wonder what they're going to fill the gaps with. I mean, it's going to be really cheesy and cringy. That's a given. But
this is it. Like,
these launch
really
events
cool
always
sport,
are.
and they somehow manage to do. They often manage to make it look kind of cheesy with a lot of the stuff they do as well. I mean, even though I think it will be good.
If they can get through 20 livery reveals in 2 hours, that is a massive positive for me, because I am sick of sitting through Ferrari talk waffle for an hour and a half to then just show me a red car, and McLaren talk through waffle for 45 minutes to then just show me an orange and black car. Like, if they can roll out 20 cars in 2 hours, I'm up for it, mate.
What if it's like an hour of waffle for each car? But then you've got a 10-hour event.
I hope not, because it starts the doors open at 7 p.m. So I hope it's not a 10-hour event.
Okay.
Well, you'll be pleased to know, Tom, that apparently Ferrari have already announced their own launch event separate to this, so you can still get your hour and a half of Ferrari waffling and probably having like an orchestra playing some random music.
To be
that was
fair
weird
to
last year,
Ferrari,
wasn't it?
actually, that one was interesting but cool. With the was that last year's? It feels so long ago.
It was either last year or year before.
Yeah.
That's what I want, though. I like the mentalness of it.
Every time you tune into the Ferrari launch, it's like, what are we going to get this year?
And other teams as well, when they get even Red Bull get like their own sports stars from the Red Bull stable to come out and talk about their sports and other things, and it's not just necessarily always about the car, it's about the company and about the team and about all of that. And this, I feel like this event takes a lot of that away, and this is just going to be about the cars and the drivers stood by the cars, probably pulling a sheet off the top of the car, or maybe they'll drive a car in, who knows. But
I'm kind of hoping that they will have gone to the teams and said, you have this block of time, this is the screens that we're going to have, you can do what you want with that. So maybe we will get a bit of variation, but
that won't happen.
I've got a little sort of mini prediction quiz for us to do, just based off this. How many random, pointless celebrity appearances do you think F1 are going to crowbar into the whole event? Just give me a number. At least 20. Chris? I want to come back to this.
I was going to say one every 10 or 15 minutes, which probably is about 20.
Okay, I'm going to be slightly more optimistic and say
I'll go further.
I'm going to say there'll be one per team to announce. In fact, no, one and a bit per team. So I'm going to go 15.
Oh, do you think Will.i.am will turn up and sing his F1 song? Remember that from Vegas last year?
Amazing,
we had that come back this year, and I wish it.
Anyway.
I bet they'll have an orchestra playing the F1 theme, though. That'll be quite cool.
That will be a cool bit. That will be a cool bit.
There we go. We found one cool bit to look forward to. Yeah, I am going to miss just the having it strung out over the space of a week or two and seeing what every team does. But
yeah, that's fun. That's something to look forward to. That for a whole 2.5. Possibly more weeks at the start of the season before everything kicks off. That's one of the most exciting parts of the season. I suppose you kind of will still get, maybe you will still get that, and this will just be supplementary on top of it. I don't know. But
we'll still have the cars coming out separately, which is always the more interesting thing to see what they've come up with.
Exactly, yeah. My only objection would be if this was the only thing we got, and we didn't get the rest. Got this at the expense of everything else. But as long as everything else is still there, as long as we get all the individual launches from the team still, then I'd be happy. But I'm just one person. I'm just one person with one person's opinion.
We'll go in with open minds,
as we try to.
Yeah. Last few bits of news we'll rattle through. As expected, Alpine have confirmed they're going to be using Mercedes engines and gearboxes from 2026. They're ending their Renault engine program the end of next year. For a 5-year contract with Mercedes, which for Mercedes doesn't make a huge difference because it comes right as their current Aston Martin contract is coming to an end. So Mercedes are just going to carry on making the same number of power units. Mm-hmm. It just feels like another step on the way to selling that team, which they continue to insist is definitely not what they're going to do, but it's definitely what they're trying to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Not much more to say about that, to be honest.
It's obvious. The idea of an Alpine Mercedes, it just sounds very weird. So I don't know how many years that'll last for. But
I don't think that'll last very long. I think.
Over at Aston Martin, Dan Fallows is stepping down as technical director. He's been there for 2.5 years, and he was pretty much when Lawrence Stroll turned up and started splashing the cash. He was pretty much the first big name signing that he poached from another team. Dan Fallows came from Red Bull, where he was head of aero, and basically Adrian Newey's number 2. So for him to be now leaving right as Adrian Newey's about to join is interesting. I guess this is the beginning of a technical team shake up to turn it into the Adrian Newey team, but given that he worked with him at Red Bull for years and him being the first one to go, it does seem a little bit strange. Maybe they never got on. Maybe Adrian Newey just doesn't like it. Who knows?
I guess when you look at the struggles Aston have had from an aero capacity, it's not solely his responsibility, but maybe there's an element of how much of Red Bull were you actually able to bring here? Because the answer's not much.
Yeah.
And then obviously, maybe Adrian's had a little word and said, this guy just copies my homework, get rid.
Yeah, maybe it's just a bit of like a wiping the slate clean, I guess, because as you say, they've not been achieving much.
And
after about halfway through last year, they've just gone backwards. So
I think the thing for Newey is he does want to go somewhere and kind of start over from everything that he said, like openly in like terms of interviews and stuff like that. So maybe going somewhere and, you know, the team being half of it being team that's been poached from Red Bull, it's like that's not what he wants. He wants to start over fresh. He wants to bring a new face in, that kind of thing, and see it as a proper new challenge rather than just being Red Bull 2.0, I guess.
Yeah, he's trying to leave Red Bull, not go and work with all the same people.
Not try and bring Red Bull to Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Well, from Dan Fallows' perspective as well, it's probably a case of when Adrian Newey's hired to do a job that's probably going to overlap quite a lot with your job, that you're almost redundant, aren't you?
You never
know. It could have come from the other side, like you say. It could be Dan Fallows looking at it and saying, "Look, if you're going to bring Adrian in, I get it, but I left Red Bull to get out of that shadow, and I don't want to be back in it, so I'm going to move on." So it could, like you say, quite easily be the other side as well. Yeah.
They did say he's staying within the organisation, so maybe he's going to move over to the WEC side.
Maybe.
Did you see the videos of them testing the Valkyrie at Daytona?
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I'd like to see that.
It is an extremely cool car. I'm really excited to see that running in. I don't know if they're doing just WEC or IMSA as well, but yeah, that's going to be a very cool car to see out there. Really looking forward to that. And then the last bit of news to cover is that Monaco, surprise, surprise, has got a new contract. We always have is Monaco going to stay on the calendar? Of course it is. It's staying until at least 2031. The most notable thing is that as of 2026, it's moving from the late May weekend it normally does, and it's going to be in the first week of June now. And they've already said that Canada's going to be moving as well. So instead of Canada and Monaco being back-to-back, which has been the case for years and is ludicrous, they're going to make Miami and Canada back-to-back, which makes way more sense. Yeah. And significantly, it also means Monaco now no longer clashes with the Indy 500, which maybe opens up the likes of Alonso and co going and having an Indy 500 run, which I'd love to see more of.
And the best thing about it is that there's less chance of rain stopping the start of the race from occurring, or the race occurring in the first place. So that's
the further into the summer we can move it, the better. Right, should we talk about Vegas? Yes. We're back.
That's where we are.
We're back, and the championship could end here. The Drivers' Championship could be called here. If Verstappen finishes ahead of Norris at all, it's all over. If Verstappen finishes second and Norris doesn't win, Verstappen's champion. And if Norris finishes lower than ninth or ninth with fastest lap, that's also not enough points to keep it alive. There's loads more nuance to it, but ultimately Norris has to beat Verstappen to keep things going.
That's the cliff notes.
I mean, it's delaying the inevitable at this point. As we said last week, it would take acts of God for that championship to not go.
It literally takes DNFs at this point. Yes. Like it's barring something absolutely manic, it's a done deal at this point.
Operation Piastri goes bowling for the remaining 3 races.
Oh God, imagine.
I think more interesting is the constructors.
Australian bias kick again, I think.
Constructors is obviously more interesting. Obviously, Ferrari did very well at Vegas last year, and they are within touching distance of McLaren at the top of the Constructors' Championship. So they, I don't know. Do we think Ferrari are going to be as quick this year?
Yeah, I think I don't see why not. I think they've been on the front foot this last few races. Ferrari, since they got on top of the Barcelona update that happened a long time ago, and they had to sort of go back on. And then they've kind of like got back on track with the updates in, where was it, Singapore? So, I don't see why they shouldn't be in with a shout at winning this weekend. And same with McLaren. I think McLaren will be in with a shout as well. I think it'll be a good race.
Should be one where you've got the three teams actually duking it out again.
Yeah, 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Alpine double podium. Who knows what they're going to achieve?
Yeah.
Anything else do you want to flag or that you're looking out for this weekend?
I wouldn't dare.
I'm gonna say, how long will it take for something obnoxious to appear on the what's it called now? I forgot.
Oh, the sphere.
The sphere. Thank you. I was gonna call it the dome then. Because we've been talking about the Millennium Dome. It just made me think of that. Yeah, it's not going to take long, is it, for something just annoying and obnoxious to show up on that during a session? So
I'm going to be hoping for enough chaos that Bottas can scrape a point and not finish his F1 career with the horrific statistic of, is he 24th now, I think, in a 20-car championship?
Maybe somewhere along those lines. Out of interest, then, if you're saying that, do you think this is his last realistic chance to get points out of the 3 races remaining?
Well, have we got Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, haven't we? Is that all that's left now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Rain at any of these, they're all in deserts.
I think a bit of street track chaos is probably Sauber's best chance of getting off that big fat 0 this season. Should we make some predictions, though?
Yes, let's go through them. I mean, start where it's easiest, which is fastest in Q3. I say easiest, it's probably not actually the easiest this season, but what do we think to pole position as it is?
Max Verstappen.
What was it last year? That's the main thing. I'm trying to remember who got it last year.
I think it was Leclerc last year.
Because Max obviously won the race, but I feel like Leclerc was pole because we had that whole incident into turn 1, didn't we?
Yeah. Which Max got a penalty for and then still won.
I'm going to go more along the lines of Ferrari again, I think, and I'm going to go with Leclerc. What about you, Chris?
I am in agreement. I also think it's going to be Leclerc.
That's nice and easy. The question is, Chris, can Leclerc turn it into the win?
I'm going to say yes.
Oh, that ruins me. I'm going to change my mind. Then I was going to say that. I'm actually going to say I'm going to have the Ferraris somehow duking it out and Sainz going for this whole last hurrah of I want as many points as possible to prove you should have never replaced me. So I'm going to say Sainz.
That is the fun thing about the end of this season is there's a lot of drivers who are now driving for themselves, which could lead to some real fun battles for these last few races.
What about you, Stu?
Max Verstappen for the win, obviously. He's my god.
Double Max.
First DNF. Chris, I'll start with you.
Who's it? Oh, it was Norris last year, wasn't it? I almost want to say Williams, but that feels really harsh after the last week they've had.
But it's a valid reason to choose a Williams, to be fair, after what's
No, I'm going to go for a
Oh.
bit of a hero to zero and say Gasly.
I mean, that's fair. Stu?
Max Verstappen. I want Max Verstappen for everything, please. Give me as much Max Verstappen as I can get.
Technically, you can't have Max Verstappen for anything else, unless you pick 33, which is an impossible number of finishes, or 1, which is also an impossible... Well, it's not impossible, but it's implausible. And then random finishing position. You could again pick Bottas as 33rd, because he's random driver this week, or you could pick Bottas as first. Then
Bottas might finish 33rd in the Drivers' Championship, the way things are going.
At this rate, he probably will be 33rd in the Drivers' Championship. I'm trying to think where I want to go for first DNF after all that filibustering. I'm going to say that it'll be someone further up. I'm going to go Piastri. Yeah, I want to go Piastri. Number of finishers, I'll start us off on that. I'm going to go with 16. Feel like there's a fair few walls and stuff, and we had safety car last year and stuff like that. So
yeah, it all got a bit hectic, didn't it, last year? I'm going to go 17.
I think that's what we had last year, to be fair. 17 what we had last year. Chris?
I'm going to go 15. I'm going big on chaos.
Wowza.
15, big on the chaos. And as I mentioned before, Chris's favourite man in the world, Valtteri Bottas, is our random driver for this week. So, Chris, you can have the honours and predict his finishing position first.
10th.
Oh, he's sticking with it.
I'm keeping the faith.
I have got zero faith, so I'm going to say 15th, pretty much last of the finishes.
I mean, 15th would be a good result for him this season, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I'm just banking he will finish, he just won't finish last on the road. What about you, Stu?
I'm going to go... I think he will finish as well. 16th.
It's basically similar to me.
So
not quite be last.
Zhou just ahead of, just behind him will be Zhou, and then he'll be ahead of Zhou.
There you go. Right, that is our predictions in. If you want to submit yours, head to backofthegrid.com. It's always worth doing because if you do get a perfect week, 5 out of 5, there is a prize. There's also information there to have a look at the fantasy leagues if you want to get involved with any of those. And I'll hand back over to Chris at this point.
Yeah, and please remember that being Vegas, it's on a weird timetable. Yes, it's on the Saturday local time, which means for people in Europe, qualifying starts at like 6 a.m. on the Saturday, I think. So make sure you get your predictions in before you go to bed on Friday. Or get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but 6 a.m. is your cut-off time. But that wraps up for this week. So we'll be back next week to review the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But until then, thanks as ever for joining us, and goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.